There are moments in life when you meet someone whose presence alone changes the atmosphere of a room. Someone who seems to understand people before they even speak. Someone who anticipates events before they unfold. Someone who moves through the world with an intelligence that feels almost unfair. They make decisions effortlessly, navigate conflict gracefully, and notice opportunities others overlook. They don't simply participate in life, they play a different game. Throughout history, few figures embodied this type of strategic brilliance more completely than Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi was not born extraordinary. He did not inherit privilege or wealth. He did not rise because of luck. He grew up in an era of betrayal, shifting alliances, and constant danger. His world was unstable, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Yet from this chaos, Musashi developed a kind of mind that could see beyond the surface of things. A mind trained not only to observe the world, but to understand it. Not only to understand it, but to bend it. His true genius wasn't the sword in his hand. It was the clarity of his perception, the discipline of his thinking, the precision of his decisions. And today, when competition is everywhere, within careers, relationships, business, leadership, creativity, and even within your own thoughts, Musashi's way of thinking becomes more valuable than ever. Because outsmarting everyone else isn't about deception. It's not about manipulation. It's about awareness, timing, emotional intelligence, and the ability to see the invisible patterns others blindly walk past. If you find meaning in learning ancient wisdom that sharpens your modern life, consider subscribing. This is where we explore the timeless strategies that help you think more clearly, act more intentionally, and move ahead of the reactive world around you. Musashi's life began in hardship. As a child, he watched adults crumble under pressure, betray one another, and fall into fear-driven decisions. But instead of being traumatized by the chaos, he studied it. He paid attention to how people behaved when they were scared, how their voices changed, how their eyes shifted, how their confidence cracked under stress, how their movements became predictable when emotions took over. He discovered something that shaped the rest of his life. People reveal themselves constantly, even when they try to hide. Their insecurities leak into their posture. Their motives leak into their tone. Their fears leak into their silence. Their weaknesses leak into the timing of their responses. Most people never notice these things because they're too busy reacting, too busy worrying, too busy performing, too busy trying to be heard. Musashi trained himself to slow down his perception so he could absorb more than others. While others rushed into fights, Musashi observed. While others tried to impress, Musashi listened. While others focused on strength, Musashi focused on insight. The paradox he discovered was powerful. If you observe slowly, you understand quickly. And if you understand quickly, you stay ahead of everyone else. Imagine how this applies to modern life. In conversations, the person who listens the longest gains the most information. In conflict, the one who stays calm sees the truth more clearly. In business, those who watch trends instead of reacting impulsively take the lead. In relationships, those who understand before responding create deeper. His second great insight came from a mindset most people resist. Everything, every failure, every mistake, every humiliation, every obstacle is valuable information. People often experience something painful and say, "Why me?" Musashi instead asked, "What is this teaching me?" When he lost a fight, he studied it. When he won, he studied even more. When he felt fear, he examined its origin. When he felt anger, he learned from it. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. Every experience was a lesson. Every lesson became an edge, and every edge brought him one step closer to mastery. In the modern world, most people run from discomfort. They avoid challenging conversations, uncomfortable truths, and situations that expose their weakness. But Musashi embraced them. Where others saw problems, he saw patterns. Where others saw pain, he saw growth. Where others saw chaos, he saw clarity waiting to be discovered. This shift in mindset alone can change your entire life. When everything becomes information, nothing becomes a threat. But Musashi's deepest advantage came from something even more challenging: self-awareness. He realized that outsmarting others begins with outsmarting yourself. Before he ever analyzed an opponent, he analyzed his own mind. He wanted to understand what clouded his judgment, what triggered impulsive reactions, what caused hesitation, what made him emotional, and what disrupted his clarity. Most people think they are fighting the world. In reality, they are fighting themselves. Their fears, their egos, their insecurity, their impatience. Musashi confronted these internal enemies relentlessly because he knew, if you don't understand your own patterns, someone else will exploit them. Imagine applying this today. You cannot negotiate well if your ego needs to win. You cannot argue effectively if anger controls your words. You cannot lead if insecurity shapes your decisions. You cannot succeed consistently if fear dictates your timing. Musashi understood that the strongest strategy is one built on emotional clarity. Outsmarting others becomes effortless when your own mind is no longer working against you. Another dimension of Musashi's brilliance was his mastery of timing. He discovered that action has a rhythm: openings, pauses, accelerations, retreats. Most people act from urgency. They feel pressure, they rush, they react too soon or too late. But Musashi trained himself to feel the exact moment when the world opened a door. He moved only when the timing aligned with advantage. And this single skill made him appear superhuman to opponents who fought. In modern life, this principle is transformative. There is a right moment to speak and a right moment to remain silent. A right moment to negotiate and a right moment to walk away. A right moment to take action and a right moment to wait patiently. A right moment to express emotion and a right moment to detach. When you act with timing instead of reacting with urgency, your decisions become sharper, cleaner, and more effective. Musashi wasn't faster than others. He was more aligned. What truly separated Musashi from other warriors was his refusal to live in a narrow mental world. He trained in art, sculpture, poetry, philosophy, architecture, and design. He believed that a single field creates a single viewpoint, but multiple fields create unpredictable intelligence. The more experiences you draw from, the more creative and adaptable your strategies become. An opponent focused only on swordsmanship was easy to read, but Musashi, who understood flow, form, rhythm, emotion, composition, and nature, became impossible to anticipate. He didn't think in straight lines, he thought in patterns. Today, this is the difference between someone who survives and someone who dominates. A person who studies psychology understands people. A person who studies art understands communication. A person who studies nature understands patience. A person who studies philosophy understands clarity. A person who studies business understands structure. A person who studies storytelling understands influence. Combine them, and you become the type of thinker who sees opportunities where others only see obstacles. Musashi also understood that environment shapes intelligence. He intentionally sought solitude, silence, and simplicity so he could hear his intuition without distortion. A noisy environment produces noisy thinking. A cluttered space produces cluttered decisions. A distracted mind produces distracted outcomes. Musashi simplified his surroundings to sharpen his perception. Today, even small changes, cleaning your workspace, setting quiet hours, reducing digital noise, can elevate your strategic thinking dramatically. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of Musashi's mind was his ability to shape circumstances before others even realized what was happening. He understood that you don't have to win through confrontation if you can win through preparation, influence, and positioning. He would change the battlefield, alter the conditions, disrupt expectations, and manipulate rhythm so the opponent walked directly into disadvantage. This is not manipulation. It's strategic architecture. Modern life works the same way. You don't win arguments by speaking louder. You win by framing the conversation. You don't win opportunities by begging. You win by preparing so thoroughly that the opportunity naturally leans toward you. You don't defeat competition by reacting to them. You defeat them by moving before they even see the opening. And this reveals the core of Musashi's brilliance. The person who shapes the structure of a situation never needs to fight as hard as the person who reacts to it. Outsmarting everyone else isn't about intelligence alone. It's about awareness, timing, adaptability, emotional clarity, and the willingness to study life more deeply than the average person ever will. As we continue traveling through the mind of Miyamoto Musashi, it becomes clear that his brilliance wasn't defined by victory alone, but by the invisible structure behind every decision he made. Musashi understood something that most people never fully grasp. The greatest battles in life aren't physical, they're psychological. They happen long before two opponents ever meet. They happen in preparation, in perception, in subtle positioning, in the quiet moments where one person is sharpening their awareness, while the other is ruled by impulse. Outsmarting others is rarely about confrontation. It is about shaping the world in such a way that the confrontation becomes unnecessary. This idea was most visible in Musashi's ability to dominate through presence before any sword was drawn. He had mastered the art of psychological advantage. When he entered a duel, he didn't simply arrive. He created a shift in atmosphere. People felt something unnerving, something difficult to describe. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't arrogance. It was an energy of someone who had studied deeply, observed silently, and moved with an inner certainty that couldn't be faked. Today, this same principle lives in leadership, negotiation, communication, and relationships. When you walk into a room with self-awareness, emotional balance, and clear observation, you already change the dynamic before words are exchanged. People react not to what you say, but to the intention behind your presence. Musashi's understanding of human psychology went far beyond intimidation. He learned that if you understand what people fear, what they expect, and what they rely on, you can disrupt their sense of control. Every person acts from patterns, and every pattern can be broken. He would arrive late to unsettle opponents, stand in awkward angles to distort their timing, or use silence to amplify tension. These were not tricks, they were lessons in human nature. When people become uncomfortable, predictable, or overly confident, they reveal openings. You can see the same thing today in everyday life. A person who becomes defensive reveals their insecurity. A person who lies reveals their fear of truth. A person who rushes reveals their anxiety. A person who over-explains reveals their need for approval. Musashi's genius was simply to notice these moments and use them. To cultivate this kind of insight in modern life, you must learn to watch without judgment. Notice the small changes in tone, the micro-pauses, the hesitation in the eyes. Most people reveal their intentions without intending to. And the more you observe, the more predictable they become. When someone is driven by ego, you know exactly how to lead them into a mistake. When someone is blinded by emotion, you know how to guide the situation calmly. When someone is rigid, you know how to shift directions until they lose balance. Outsmarting everyone else is not about superiority. It is about understanding deeper than others are willing to. Musashi's mind was not only strategic, but incredibly flexible. He didn't trap himself in a single identity. He didn't cling to a single method. He didn't worship tradition. While other warriors repeated the same training endlessly, Musashi reinvented his approach constantly. He experimented with angles, distances, stances, timing, and weapons. This mindset is what allowed him to create the famous two-sword style, an innovation that shocked an entire culture accustomed to single-sword combat. He saw possibilities where others saw rules. He saw freedom where others saw limitations. This ability to break patterns is the heart of innovation today. Those who simply follow the standard path will always be one step behind those who question it. To think like Musashi, you must question habits you've never questioned. Why do you respond the same way to conflict? Why do you fear certain outcomes so deeply? Why do you stick to routines that no longer serve you? Why do you restrict yourself to one approach? Most people live inside invisible cages built from their own assumptions. Musashi broke every cage he entered. That's why he became unpredictable. A predictable person can be defeated. An unpredictable mind cannot. Another aspect of Musashi's thinking that set him apart was his mastery of stillness. Stillness is misunderstood today. Many people think stillness means inactivity, silence, or withdrawal. But to Musashi, stillness meant inner alignment, being calm even when the world becomes chaotic. When you are calm, you can see clearly. When you see clearly, you choose wisely. And when you choose wisely, you rarely need to fight. This is why he said the greatest victory is the one achieved without drawing the sword. When you master stillness, you remove the emotional fog that blinds most people. They fight because they are triggered. They argue because they feel attacked. They panic because they lack clarity. But when you center yourself, you can see the situation as it truly is, not as your feelings distort it. You can practice this today in moments of tension. When someone angers you, breathe before you respond. When something scares you, observe the sensation without running from it. When chaos erupts around you, anchor your attention on one simple detail: a sound, a breath, the weight of your body. These tiny acts of stillness sharpen your intelligence. A calm person sees what a reactive person cannot, and whoever sees more, wins more. Musashi also believed deeply in the power of simplicity. His life grew increasingly minimal as he aged, not out of poverty, but out of intention. He removed distractions from his life so he could think more clearly. He eliminated unnecessary possessions, unnecessary conversations, unnecessary obligations. He understood that busyness is often a disguise for lack of clarity. In our modern world, simplicity becomes a weapon. When your mind isn't cluttered, you think faster. When your schedule isn't bloated, you act with precision. When your intentions are not scattered, your decisions become powerful. Ask yourself, how many things in your life are draining your energy? How many commitments do you maintain simply out of habit? How many people do you keep around out of guilt rather than value? How many distractions steal your attention daily? If you want to think like Musashi, you must be willing to remove what weakens your focus. There is another layer of Musashi's genius that is rarely discussed. He knew how to reinvent himself when necessary. Many people cling to an identity because they fear the unknown. But Musashi shed identities the way a snake sheds its skin. He was a warrior, but he was also an artist. He was a strategist, but also a philosopher. He knew when to enter the world and when to walk into solitude. He knew when to push forward and when to completely change paths. Reinvention is the ultimate form of intelligence. Those who refuse to evolve become trapped by the version of themselves they've outgrown. To outsmart others today, reinvention is essential. Industries shift, opportunities mutate, beliefs age. Technology transforms the world constantly. If you remain rigid, you fall behind. But if you learn to transform, you remain ahead of the curve. Musashi teaches us that mastery is a fluid state, not a destination. Ultimately, his wisdom leads to one central truth. The smartest person in the room is rarely the loudest, the fastest, or the most confident. It is the one who sees reality as it is, not as they wish it to be. The one who understands before acting. The one who listens before speaking. The one who builds themselves from the inside out. Outsmarting everyone else is less about brilliance and more about awareness. Awareness of yourself, of others, of timing, of environment, and of the silent opportunities that float through every moment of life. And if you've reached this point, if you've felt something shift inside you, if Musashi's philosophy has awakened something deeper, sharper, more intentional within you, consider subscribing. This channel exists for those who are ready to think differently, to step away from mindless living, and to study the ancient strategies that sharpen the modern mind. There is a whole world of wisdom waiting for you here, and together, we can keep growing into people who don't just react to life, but shape it. Musashi's final gift to the world was not his victories. It was the way he taught others to see. How to observe the invisible layers of human behavior. How to recognize the rhythm beneath chaos. How to build clarity from discomfort. How to use presence as power. How to think 10 steps ahead by understanding what others overlook. Outsmarting everybody else is not a skill reserved for a chosen few. It is a mindset forged from discipline, awareness, adaptability, and emotional mastery. When you begin to live with these qualities, life stops feeling like an unpredictable storm and starts feeling like a landscape you can navigate. And as you move forward, remember this truth Musashi lived by. The greatest strategist is not the one who knows the most, but the one who understands the deepest. The one who sees the truth hidden beneath appearances. The one who stays calm while others panic. The one who thinks while others react. Outsmarting others is not about defeating them. It is about elevating yourself into someone who cannot be thrown off course by the noise of the world.